Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name's Ted Gardner, and I'm an interviewer for the Library of Congress Oral History Program, which is so capably run here in Cincinnati by the history department of our public library. Dennis Daly is our camera operator and one of the top historians in our library here, which is one of the great libraries of the country, and we're very, very lucky to have it. We're very fortunate and happy to have with us today Clarence Johnson. And Clarence lives in Finneytown, and we're looking forward to his telling his story. And you're going to get a DVD of this, Clarence, for you and your family, and the copy will go to the Library of Congress and the archives in Washington, and a copy kept here in the local library. So you're going to be history, buddy, and we're going to find out all about you. Where were you born, Clarence?
I was born here in Cincinnati.
You were?
Yeah.
And where did you go to elementary school?
I went to elementary school, Kirby Road, in Northside, Cummins.
Oh, yeah. Sure.
Yeah.
Kirby School?
That's another little community, kind of like Oregon, you know.
Oh, yeah.
In fact, I was the only black K through 8.
Is that so?
Yeah.
Well, I'll be darned.
And
what was it like being that?
Well, I tell you, the story about that is I found out that people, they have their stereotypes.
Sure.
But I had a dad that always kept me informed as to some of the things that I would have to be faced with,
right.
You know. And he says, son, I don't care what you do. You keep your mind on the books. Right. These things that come, I don't know how you're going to deal with them. Some of them you're going to have to deal with them as they come. But, well, you know, you have the slurs and,
oh, sure.
And you notice in your class how some of the students you know, they just kind of stand off, and then you had those students that, for some reason, there's always a few that, hey, they're just like anybody else. Yeah. I clicked with them right away. You know? I can remember Don McClatchy, William Gandenberger, those guys.
Right.
And as I matriculated through the elementary, I got into junior high, and that's where things changed, I noticed.
Yes.
I played ball, and in junior high we had other schools where we not only played intramural, we played you know, other schools.
Sure.
And I ran into some guys that eventually became heck of a sports guys. You know, they were Tom O'Malley. He was a quarterback for Hughes, and he ended up being the most famous quarterback. He was picked most famous quarterback in the nation when he attended UC.
I see.
But what happened after the junior year, we would win games. I was pretty good on the team, and it seemed like a lot of people who wasn't speaking, they started, you know, I was kind of like a little celebrity, me, Tom O'Malley, and a fellow named Calvin Felix. So I noticed a thing, it seems like, I guess they say, hey, well, this guy is good. He's given us some reputation.
Sure.
And, you know.
What position did you play on the team?
Well, I pitched. Tom O'Malley and I pitched, and I also played second base. I was kind of all around guy. I could play outfield. I could do it all, you know.
Sure. Well, then you saw you knew old Crosley Field, and did you know some of the players down there? And
say that again?
At Crosley Field. Did you know any of the Reds players?
Oh, yeah, I do a lot of games. You know, Frank McCormick, Ernie Lombardi, Iowa Goodman.
Harmon, the first black that played for the Reds?
Well, I'm coming up to that, but prior to that, you know, you had guys like Billy Myers at short, Iowa Goodman at right. And then when after Jackie Robinson was brought into the league, you had guys like Harmon and let's see, the Swish, and Kurt Flood,
Yeah.
you know those guys.
Right. Oh, yeah.
He was a good ball player.
Well,
Frank Robinson.
Oh, golly, yes.
Yeah.
Well, you must have, as a boy, your dad probably, did you ever see any of the teams in the Negro Baseball League
Oh, my
play?
goodness, yeah. Well, you know, again, you know, once the Reds was on the road, you would have teams like Homestead Grays,
Sure, in Kansas
Indianapolis
City.
Clowns, Kansas City Monarchs,
Yeah.
Alabama, I forget what they were, but anyway, yeah.
Yeah.
I saw Neil Shadow Robinson,
Buck
and
Owens.
Buck Owens, first base, Josh Gibson.
How about that?
Well, you know, I was crazy about baseball.
Oh, sure.
I never was a big guy, so I didn't play football, you know, but
Right.
baseball, it just seemed to
Oh.
come to me naturally.
I'm the same way. I grew
Yeah.
up in baseball. My
Love
dad.
that.
Yeah. Well, now, where was junior high? What junior high was it you attended?
Well, you know, during those days, elementary went through junior high.
Oh,
You
it
know, you
went
stayed in the
through-
same facility.
Right up to high school.
Yeah, right. And then
Okay.
from there, I went to Hughes, and that's where I ran into another shock. I got a reality shock, you know, because I had played so well in Knothole, and the only teams that could really handle us at that time was the teams from downtown. Otis boys would come out. Those guys were like pros, you know, and we couldn't do anything with them. So O'Malley and Calvin Felix, I'll never forget those guys. Calvin went to the Miners and O'Malley went to Cleveland Browns. And when we got to high school, we used to brag about this. We said,
Sure.
hey, Hugh's not doing too good. We got a nucleus here. We're going to change that when we get there, you know. And, you know, not thinking, naive, you know. So I'll never forget the day we went down to sign up for baseball. Big crowd of guys. I'm in the middle and waiting to get up there to sign the papers, you know. And I noticed Red Crick, he was a coach. I don't know whether you remember him or not. He was making a sign like, and you know, I wasn't paying attention. I thought somebody was acting up, you
Sure.
know, something get out. And Reichert, the gym teacher, he hit me on the shoulder and pulled me out the crowd. He said, hey, look, he's talking about you. And I said, well, hey, I'm not even up there yet. He don't know me, you know. And he said, well, we have a policy here, and the policy is blacks cannot participate in major sports.
Oh, for
You
heaven's
see, that's baseball, football, and basketball.
Yeah.
And I don't know what happened, you know, but I kind of went blank.
Mm-hmm.
And he hit me again. He said, but I saw you flipping out there. He said, gym team, you can go out for that. And I had no aspirations for, you know, that branch of activity. And so he said, if you come out, I'm going to see what I can do to break the policy. I said, you're on, you know. So 1 year on the gym team, and sophomore year, hey, what's happening? You know, and he said, well, I haven't been able to pull it off yet. So I didn't go out for the gym team, you know, again.
Yeah, those.
But
that
you know,
was-
those kind of things, you know.
That was tough for,
Yeah,
for
right.
a youngster, and my goodness. So you went to the great Hughes High School, which spawned so many
Yeah.
prominent people, you know,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
good athletes and everything.
We had the fastest guys in the city on track. We could run track.
Sure, oh my
They were
God.
aching to get in the backfield, you
Yeah,
know.
I'll
But
bet. What year were you born, Clarence?
May 1st, 26.
1926, okay. So on through high school, did you have any hobbies or anything in high school besides sports that you?
No, but what I did do after that happened, the baseball episode, I contacted the principal and told him I wanted to get transferred because even though Hughes had restrictions, Woodward and Withrow didn't.
Right.
So I requested to be transferred to Woodward because I was in the High Y,
Okay.
9th Street High Y club, you know, and I said, and I knew a lot of those guys, and I said, well, maybe I can go down and play with them. So he understood, and he said, hey, you're right. He said, if you're not happy here, I'll certainly call the principal. I'll get back with you in a couple of days. So he got back and he said, he wants you to give him 5 names of people that I know down there. You know, sure, you know. So I gave him 5 names of the guys that was in Defenders IY. And he called me back and he said, some of those guys, called the principal back. Principal said, hey, Johnson, said he's not going to take you. He said, a few of those guys, he says, been giving him headaches. And he didn't need another headache, you know. So that went off. And then that kind of affected my studies. And I dropped out in my junior year, you know.
Now, let's see. Born in 26, so when Pearl Harbor came along in 41, you were 15 years old.
Right.
Do you remember Pearl Harbor Day?
How well do I remember?
I'll bet. Tell us about that. How did that affect you?
Well, to be honest with you, I had never heard of Pearl Harbor.
That was very common.
But I had a brother, and I still refer to him as my intellectual blood. This guy reads books. He's, oh my goodness, you know. So my brother had just had a son, and they had just brought him home. It was on a Sunday. As you know, that's and we were all out there, you know, with the little baby, everybody coming, making over the baby, you know. And my brother walks into the room, and he was always a kind of serious guy, you know. When he walked in the room, he says, Pearl Harbor has been attacked. No one stopped anything, because no one heard of Pearl Harbor.
Not.
And he said, didn't you hear me? Pearl Harbor has been attacked. We're at war. Now that got everybody's attention, you know. And so he said, it's going to be a lot of news on the radio tonight, so all of you should stay near your radio. You know, so that's how I.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and I remember that. I always tell my little nephew, you know, I'll never forget your age.
No.
Yeah.
I should say. Well, when that, of course, you were too young to go in right away, and how long did you go before you got into the service?
Okay, well, all my brothers volunteered.
How many did you have?
I mean, all but one. I had 5 brothers.
Did you
One
really?
worked at the defense plant, and he got a reprieve. And the other ones were, in fact, all of us was in some branch of the Navy. My oldest brother was Merchant Marine.
Wow.
Harold, the intellect, he was, he went to, one of those schools. He volunteered and he became a machinist mate.
Okay.
My other brother became a motor mech. I never did know the difference of those two, but anyway, when I dropped out in my junior year, then I started, I worked a little bit in places, and it's kind of crazy at that time, you know. I didn't hold the jobs, you know, and ended up getting drafted.
Okay.
Got drafted in December '44.
And you got to choose the Navy, though.
No, I didn't choose it. I didn't choose it.
They chose you.
Fort Hays, Columbus.
Yeah.
You remember that?
Well, I know of it, yeah.
Okay.
Right.
I got up there and I didn't want to go to the Navy for some reason, and I thought the Army, a lot of guys would come back. I just liked their uniforms better than the Navy, you know. And so when you get up to the desk, the guy said, "What branch of service?" I said, "I like the Army." He said, "Boom, you're in the Navy." You know? Yeah, so that's how I got in the Navy.
Okay. So where did you go for boots?
Great Lakes, Camp Lawrence and Camp Smalls. You know, those were only 2 camps was up there for us at that time. Yeah, so.
So you're at Great Lakes and.
Great Lakes, yeah.
You came out of there.
Oh, I liked the Great Lakes. At that time, They had Buddy Young, Marion Motley, and at Mass Calisthenic Day, we get to see these guys run.
Wow.
You know? And what happened, we had a guy, I told you we had fastest guys in the city at Hughes.
Right.
So Frank told me, he said, I can beat Buddy Young. I said, well, tell the commander to put you in there, you know. And the guy from Toledo says, I think I can take Marion Motley.
How about that?
And at Mass Calisthenics Day, that place was packed. They had reporters, and they got down on the block. And you know, at that time, Buddy Young was slated fastest guy in the world, not just the nation. And he's playing with one of those. No, they both was with the Navy football team. The Navy team, but he eventually went to Texas.
Right.
I think.
saw Buddy Young play for the Navy out on the West Coast.
So anyway, they got down in the blocks, and the gun went off, and Wilburn went out there, and I tell you, he beat him. The reporters, the captain ran up there, and they had I said, what the heck is going on? I said, maybe they're gonna make a celeb out of Frankie. And he was pushing him aside, and he was talking to Buddy Young. And they said, came back to the mic, said, we're gonna have to run this race over. And I think, now that I reflect on it, this guy, they couldn't have that going out to the news. So they said something happened at the start off.
Oh,
you know, they never was clear on what that was. And so I say, Frank, man, you're gonna be famous.
Yep.
I said, you get down there. He said, oh, I can get him. I can get him, you know. Yeah. So they got back in the blocks, and the gun went off. Buddy Young came out of there like an automobile. I mean, he, and that, you know, he always had his head.
Yes.
He must have beat Frank for the 6-yard dash. He must have had 10 yards.
Oh my gosh.
And I asked Frank what happened. He said, I don't know. He said, I got off my same start. He said, when I looked up, he was,
oh,
you know, so God. I think what it was, he was playing it slow and easy, Young was.
Right.
And so legitimately, you know, so I said, well, what do you think? He said, something happened in that first race. He said, but I knew this guy was going to be ready for me. Mm-hmm. And when I looked, he was 10 yards ahead of me.
Oh, about that. Yeah. That's a great story, I should say.
Yeah.
Well, then, out of boots, what was your first assignment?
Well, as I told you, I went to that OGU unit, and I heard those young white boots talking about that they had.
Yeah, now what did OGU stand for?
Outgoing unit.
Outgoing unit.
And that was the only time you have integration, but that's just waiting on assignment. You're in a big Quonset hut, look like a mile long, you know, and you're just there waiting on assignment. So during those days, what I discovered was a lot of times they had a lot of blacks and they didn't know what to do with them, you know. You couldn't get in combat, you know. And so you would go up and ask, well, they're trying to find some place for you. And hey, I must have been there about almost a month or more, you know. And then they called us all in and say they're starting a new company called Logistic Support. And you're going to Williamsburg, Virginia, and you're going to work with the Marines. You know, so they took all our Navy gear, and we got a lot of Marine gear, you know, and did our training, driving trucks, you know, at night, no lights, you know, that kind of stuff to show you what it would be like over in the Pacific. And so I went down there. You constantly run into this thing, the what I call the fallout of segregation, racism, you know. And we were in B Company, no swimming pool, no movies. I mean, the huts we lived in were shabby, and you know, and all that. So that made you kind of hard to the function. You know, you always, you know.
Oh yeah, I should say.
And then when you go up topside to get your personnel, and you look at Company A, it looked like a campus, you know, freshly painted, movies and all that. And, you know, we ran into trouble there. You know, we was constantly talking about going over the hill and leaving, and we had black commanders, and they would over here and they say, hey, you know, cut that out, you know. So,
well, you were sort of a pioneer then to have the black commanders, your black officers,
yeah,
in the Navy.
yeah,
I know there were originally 14 that
yeah.
graduated and got their commission. Well, Clarence, then this outgoing unit, then they sent you where?
Camp Williamsburg, and we prepared ourselves to support Marines by driving trucks, and did some training with our rifles and bivouac, and you know, the crawling on your stomach and that kind of learning how to shoot, and also learning how to take small arms down and put them back together, you know. And that's how most of us got our gunner's rate, because most guys in the blacks in the Navy, they were either at ammo dumps or some company that they'd have just made up, you know, to some place to place you.
So you got gunner's mate third class?
Yeah. I got a gun. No, not third class, but I got a gunner mate stripe.
Oh, I see.
Yeah,
Stripe,
you know,
Seaman first.
yeah, I got that. And we had some incidents down there that I got caught up in. We went up to get some personnel stuff, you know, soap and stuff like that, and saw this movie, you know, and he said, hey, I like to see that. So we got in line, you know, and when we got up to get tickets, he called, the guy stopped and picked up the phone, and next thing you know, we were surrounded, you know, by Marines, and they say, hey, you guys, I said, hey, man, we going over there, we gonna be exposed, at risk just like everybody else.
Sure.
I wanna see a movie, you know.
Absolutely.
And boy, they cut, you know, they said, nigga, you ain't seeing nothing, you know. And I said, well, you know, there's about 5 of us said, well, we're gonna be here. And then this guy picked up the phone and called, you know, and made another call. Here come the commander. And he walked up and he asked, what's up? We told him. He turned to his boys, the Marines who had surrounded, and said, hey, you take them in the movie. I'm going back to my quarters. I don't want to hear anything. I want them to get back down to their compound. But just take them in the movie.
Right.
And they took us in the movie and took us back.
Wise man,
Yeah, you know.
wise man.
And that was an incident.
Right.
Yeah.
And so how long were you there at Camp Williamsburg?
Well, I guess the most, well, I don't know whether it was stupid or not, but I ran into a guy who had been out at, not Port Chicago, Hastings, Nebraska. You might have heard about those dumps that were blowing up.
Yes.
One of them blew up. The next day he refused to go out. So he got a general court martial, and they sent him down there to us. Well, he was from Cincinnati, and I knew him.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And he had been in the Navy for a while, and you know, and so he was telling me about that. I said, yeah, and I don't particularly like how we're being treated down here. You know, and we got high one night and drinking that old hot beer, you know, and left. You know, we got some fake. I want to tell you the story now.
Okay,
you know,
that's great. We want stories.
Okay, so we got some fake passes made through the yeoman and hit the road, you know, and came back to Cincinnati and took off our uniform and laid around and trying to make up our minds what did we want to do. You know, we were thinking about deserting. And but we had made, you know, Canada, what do you do, you know? But I didn't know at that time what I was doing. And I only talked to one sister. And I said, hey, I'm here. I want to hear nothing about this. I say, and I lied to her. I said, I'm going back. And she was all upset. And then she called me. She said, you got to go back. I said, what's the matter? She said, the SPs know when your dad works. Sure. And he worked for the B&O. He worked at night. So they wait till he get to sleep, you know. And I said, so I said, well, you tell my dad that I'm going back. And she said, well, I tell you what, he said, he better not see you. And he said, the next thing I want to hear from you that you're back in that camp.
Right.
Okay. So we got on the train and we were going to go to Chicago and got caught through my friend. I don't know, something like that happening, you know, but we were sitting, you know how old trains was? You could sit and somebody could sit there facing you.
Sure.
You know.
Yeah.
And two SPs come up and say, hey, mate, can I join you? I said, hey, you the boss, you know. We got to sit down and we were talking and, you know, he assumed that we was from, you know, going to Chicago, Great Lakes, you know. And he asked for a match. He said, oh, I don't have a match, mate, you got a match. And this guy gave him, my friend went to get a match and the pass fell out. And we had told him where we were stationed, you know, and we were just going on a, you know. He said, hey, wait a minute, you're not assigned to Great Lakes. And this says you're from Williamsburg. So at the next USO stop, they called and cleared that up, you know, that we were from, and they threw us in the Portsmouth jail until the SPs down there came and got us. You know, went back, we served a little time in the brig, you know.
God's sakes. What an experience.
But I tell you what, my dad, I wrote him a letter and he had somebody to send a letter back to me, and I always respected him. This guy can strike fear in me from miles away, you know. Said, son, I don't want to hear about this anymore.
Yep.
You going over there, things will be better when you get back. Just get on and do whatever you got to do. That's what I did, you know.
Well, that was good advice for anybody, you know. There were always people that were fighting the system, no matter what, and you had to get straightened out, or you're going to be in deeper trouble.
Oh, sure, I could see that. I was maturing, you know, as time went. You know, you think about what you've done.
So now you were about what, about 17, 18?
I'm 18.
You're 18
Yeah,
now, okay.
And what happened in the brig, we was in there, and during the time our company went overseas. And so I caught up with them later on. They still set me up. You know, I didn't try to hype or anything, you know, at that time, you know. So I caught up with my company and finished my time out, you know, as I stated, until the war was, you know, which Hirohito, what was his name? Was that the
Emperor?
Emperor.
Yeah.
When he surrendered unconditionally, you know, I'll never forget that night. Now, that was a really unforgettable night.
Boy, well, now we wanted to hear about that.
Well, I was stationed at Gishikawa, and that's up on a hill. And during that time, everybody was kind of laid back. We had functions in a depot, and I guess everybody was waiting to go over. But we was sitting up there that night, drinking that hot beer again, you know. And all of a sudden, we saw these flares going up. And I said, man, that looks like a V. You know, and I said, look, they're going up all over Ireland. A V, you know.
For victory.
Yeah, and so I turned the radio on, and we got the news. Hey, we must have parted for a couple of weeks. Because the officers just laid off, you know. They just stayed. Everybody was, you know, I said, I can't believe this, you know. But then the news came as to how, you know, we all thought we were going home.
Right.
But then they came and told us what the breakdown would be, how you would go home. They had those points.
Yep.
And by me being young, you know, I didn't have any points. When they started saying, well, this group will go, I said, oh, I'll never get out of here. I'll be over here till the next war starts. You know? And, but so eventually we closed down the depot and brought all the supplies down to the ships, you know, and they loaded all that stuff up
Right.
and then sent us to Guam and Marianas.
Oh, I see, up in
Yeah.
Marianas.
Yeah, and I was,
Did you go with them?
no,
You didn't go.
no, they put us on the LST. And,
Oh, they did?
Yeah, oh, I tell you know those, what do you call them, those storms they have?
Typhoons?
Typhoons. Well, we had several while I was over, at least 3 of them.
Terrible.
And got on that LSD, that flat thing,
Oh, man.
and tried to outrun one of them. Ooh-wee.
Oh, yeah.
Boy, that thing would go back, and when it come down on the water, it's just like hitting on cement,
Sure.
you know. And I was thinking, I thought it was going to break in half.
Well, sure. And they were shallow.
Yeah,
Of course,
right.
That was what
flat.
they were built for.
Right,
you know, and
right.
Good heavens.
But we made it to Guam, you know. Yeah, yeah, we made it to Guam, and I was on the Mastered Arms Force. We held prisoners who you know, get in trouble and stuff like that. Yeah.
So how long were you there at Guam?
Short time, about 3 or 4 months, and then they sent us to Marshall Islands, and we were there quite a while. In fact, I didn't think we was on. Yeah, Anahuac. Yeah, and you know, those ships would come in with all that equipment for they were using to drop the atomic bomb.
Yeah.
And we worked there, and I ran into another commander. This guy, both of my commanders on Okinawa, we had white and black commanders. Our black commander was sent home, and we finished up with white commanders on Okinawa, and got to Anahuac, and a guy came down from the headquarters and said, the commander want to see Clarence Johnson. He just want to. I say, it's got to be a mistake, you know. And guy said, man, what have you done? You know, have you been doing something wrong? I said, hey, you've been clean, you know.
Right.
And so I went up there, and when I walked in the door, I said, oh my goodness, Nelson. He was a scout commissioner. He had went in the Navy and went up the ladder, you know. And he said, I saw Cincinnati, and I had to call you, you know. And I knew him.
How about that?
Yeah, so
Well, that was a happy circumstance.
he gave me a decent job. He pulled me out of a hole. I was working down in the hole, you know, that old hot hole, getting all that stuff up. He said, hey, I'll take care of that.
That was terrible duty.
Yeah. I was guiding the crane, you know, that's about as soft as it gets.
Sure.
Yeah, you know, the crane going down.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
You're sitting down, too.
Yeah, right there on the, yeah.
Absolutely,
right there.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, that must have been fairly interesting duty, though, to all that equipment and supplies that they were going to go out there and dump.
Yeah, and we got to see some civilians. They would come over. There was cruiser. I don't know. At one time, I remember the name, a Japanese cruiser.
Oh, okay.
And they let us go on it too. But it would be sitting out there, and they see them come, and you know, they got on dress civvies and everything, and they look at. And we went out there, and it was like little nicks. They said what happened. They had got this cruiser off from its route and just bombed it, just dropped it. But it had so much metal, they couldn't sink it.
Couldn't sink it.
And it was just like little nicks. And the story was that they dropped all kind of them, and you would see little holes like it would hit, but they couldn't sink it.
Right.
So they had it out there on, you know, exhibition for people from the States to come and, you know.
Well, you know, Clarence, it's very interesting that you're having this experience, because so many people don't really know about Bikini and the A-bomb tests on these old ships and so forth. What did you see when you were there? Did you see old battleships?
Oh, you would see those little gunboats.
Yeah.
Oh, they was like rust and floating. We swim out there to those, you know, and you would see B-17s.
Right.
That's first plane I saw that was remote. a plane would fly above it.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
And I don't know how they did that, but they were just, these things were just new on the scene.
Yeah.
And you would see them, and they would try to land them. And Anahuac was so small until they would have to make several runs before
Sure.
they could land that plane. But
Right.
they were successful. It was just in the training to see how they were working, you know. But, you know, I saw a lot of that. A lot of ships rusted, I guess had been sunk, you know, or
Right.
had, you know, yeah, they were all surrounded around there. Saw a lot of that.
Well, of course, the idea was to do this, drop the bomb on these old ships and see what the
Yeah.
damage was done, how much was done, and so forth, and assess that sort of a situation. Were you there when the bomb, when they bombed it?
Well, you know, no one could be there. That's when I found out I was going home.
Oh, I see.
Because the bulletin came through, say the bomb will be dropped on date March so and so. But we had to be so many miles out to sea because they didn't know. They say the bomb could start a tidal wave.
Oh, sure.
You know.
Sure.
Yeah.
And you know, the poison from the
Yeah.
explosion and
Yeah.
so forth.
So we were. I guess we might have been halfway home when that bomb dropped. You know.
Well, that's amazing, and I've read a little bit about that, and how they sent people back into that area, you know, after the bomb was dropped.
I remember reading about
Oh
that.
yeah, and I mean it was today. Today you wouldn't do that. I mean, we learned that was pretty deadly
right.
stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I read about how those
Well, the Navy
were
had
coming down with a lot of disease.
a huge part in that, and that's interesting that you had a part in it. I think that is you're the first one that we've interviewed, to my knowledge, that was there and had that sort of duty. So then what kind of a ship did you come back on?
Same type transport.
Transport.
And we hit TI, and that's where I made another mistake.
Terminal Island.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I got there, and they told us that if all of you guys who were anxious to get home, because there was still some time, they said, before we could get home, a couple of months or 3 months or something, say, but we can let you go. Actually, you can be on a train guaranteed in 3 days, but here are your options if you want to do that. You can join the active reserves or the inactive reserves. And I said, well, just explain it to me.
Sure.
I'm going to take one. And so he said that active reserves, you would have to attend meetings, and you would get a stipend, a monthly stipend. You know?
Sure.
And I said,
And a chance to advance.
yeah, and I told him I wouldn't be interested in that. I want to just get away on something permanent. He said, well, inactive is, you don't have to do anything, but we got you for 4 years.
Right. You're in the
I
reserve.
said, where's the paper? I'll sign that, you know. And that's where I made the biggest mistake of my life. Came home, got married. Within 3 months of that 4 months, Truman froze everybody.
Oh, yeah.
And I ended up in the Korean conflict.
Korean conflict.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
Married, son,
Oh,
you
my
know,
God.
I said,
Oh, dear.
I was depressed, and all of us had said we would never go back to the Pacific.
Yeah.
And I went almost in fact, I almost ended up back in Okinawa, and I said I'd never go back to Okinawa.
Oh,
yeah,
golly.
Yeah.
Gosh. So then, what sort of duty did you have in the Korean conflict?
Well, you know, it's a new day now. You know, Truman had desegregated it,
Yep.
and I didn't know what to expect, and I was shocked. I left Cincinnati, hit Long Beach, and I was assigned to the D.D. Halsey Powell 686, a destroyer.
Mm-hmm.
And I went straight to the commander. I said, hey, I'm not shining any shoes. I'm not going to cook any meals. Now, they didn't put me on here, and now there's going to be some trouble here. And he says, hey, I thought you had heard, this is desegregated.
Sure.
And whatever your MO or whatever they call that, your strike is.
Yeah.
He said, that's where you'll be assigned.
Good for you.
So I was assigned to the 20 millimeters, 40
Mm-hmm.
quads, and the 5-inch, worked on all those 5-inch
Sure.
38s,
Right.
And that was the first time I got to be exposed to what sea duty was all about, what the real Navy was all
Yeah.
about,
Right.
on ships, yeah.
You stood watch and you had.
Yeah. all
But
that.
you didn't. Yeah, I understand that.
And you had your assignment. We had to take our ship out of mothballs because all those ships were in mothballs.
Sure.
They're the Sullivans. You remember they made the
Oh,
movies?
yeah.
Well, that was in our group.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we were with Task Force 58 when we went up to bombard those bridges around Wonsan in Korea.
Right.
But we had to take the ships out of mothballs, and that, now you're talking about some work.
That's mad.
To get
That's a
that
mess.
goo, oh my goodness.
Oh my goodness.
And then to get everything in operation, I was assigned to 20 millimeters. That was my.
You had to clean all that
Oh,
gel.
all that, and put them in.
Terrible.
And once all the guns were set up and ready to go, then we had to shoot fire 'em to see,
Right.
operation.
Test them out.
Yeah.
My goodness.
Yeah.
Well, that was really dirty work. I was lucky. I did not get called back for the Korea, but did you get ashore in Korea?
No, we
You were
just
always on shipboard.
always on ship. Well, Japan is where we docked in
Oh, I see.
Nagasaki, or no, not Nagasaki.
Nagoya.
No, we went into port there all the time.
Sasebo.
Sasebo, and there was another one.
Yeah.
But Sasebo was
Yeah,
one of them
right.
would come in, yeah.
I'll think of it in a minute
Yeah,
too.
right.
but-
And we had a lot of fun though on those ships because what had happened, they had brought in a lot of 90-day wonders to operate those ships. Boy, those guys was. We were coming in off a run in Long Beach, and the wives would be down to meet their husbands, and the girls would meet their boyfriends. And we were coming in, and I looked. This guy was going something like 25 knots, and he wasn't 50 yards or 100 yards from nothing. And the people saw it, and they started running.
Get out of here.
And he just skimmed. Oh, he hit that dock and he just shifted off, and we crack up, guys. Those guys trying to learn how to operate those ships. And some of us laughed themselves. Commanders say, I got to get it right, And same thing in Sasebo, and going in the ports there. It was so bad, we was anxious to get on Liberty. This guy could not get the ship in. What they would do, they would bring a Japanese guy, I don't know, what are those little boats, they tie you up?
Sampans or
No, they,
pilot boat?
yeah, and they would come in and they would take over the ship.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, and we were always embarrassed by the Australians, Limeys as they call them.
Yeah.
I don't like to use all those names, but they would come in like an automobile. Those British ships come in and they out-delivered it, and we always have to have somebody to bring ours in. Well, they say these guys are just fresh out of school.
They didn't know their, from their elbow.
Yeah.
In 90 days there was so much to learn. Well, Clarence, that's just fascinating, and your period there in Japan, how long did that last? You were there throughout the Korean conflict.
Well, what happened, prior to leaving the States, my wife was having problems in her early stages of pregnancy.
Oh.
And the Red Cross sent me home.
Oh, I see.
And when I got back, I was late, no fault of my own, because you know you're hopping.
Sure.
Yeah, you know, and you go to, you know, whatever you can get. You tell the guy, here's my orders, I got to be back. They say, well, here's the only thing. They take me down to New Orleans, I go to Huntsville, you know, we're trying, well, if you go here, we can get you back. So I was late. So they put me on 14 days extra duty and cleaning up offices. And I was cleaning up this office, and you know, guy had left a lot of papers on the desk, and I picked up one entitled Hardship Discharge. So I read it, I say, that applies to me.
Right.
So I completed it and submitted it and forgot about it. And we came back from one of our 30-day runs, and it was on a Sunday, and we were getting ready to go to Okinawa. And that's the thing I said, I never was gonna go. But our next, I don't know why we were going, but we would go up there in the North Sea and Wonsan and blasted those bridges, and Russia, they say Russia was doing it, but they were releasing mines into the convoy, you know. And we would take those millimeters, 20 millimeters, and see them off and hit them and explode them, you know.
Yeah.
But they say they never could pinpoint Korea's doing it, and the word was that Russia was helping them, and they was doing that, you know. But anyway, we didn't go back, we were going to Okinawa, and that Sunday, the executive officer, he came down, and we were all just sitting there. He said, "You're going home." No, he said, do you want to go home? And he said, well, I say, everybody here wants to go home.
Well, sure.
You know? And he said, well, I'm talking to you. I said, yeah, I won't go home, sir.
You filled out that hardship form.
Yeah. And so he said, well, your hardship came through.
How about
and you
that?
can leave anytime you want to.
How about that?
I couldn't believe it, yeah.
Yeah. Well, that was good timing on your part to be able to get to that form on that man's desk.
Yeah.
Well,
I'll tell you something, another episode that I had on the destroyer. The guys didn't like us. I can understand, you know, if you're not used to being around people, and if they've never been on your ship, and you know, this black thing again. And the boatswain mate, he would always send me down to the hull, and I would have to take those readings on all ammunition and see what kind of condition it was in. One of the things, if it was damp or wet, I had to record that in the journal, you know. And I didn't know, you know, I'm going down there doing my duty, and I would always have to carry the book up to the executive officer, you know. And after about the 4th week, I came in, he said, what are you doing here? And I said, well, I'm bringing you the book. He said, that's a 2-week assignment. It rotates. I said, well, you know, I just follow orders, you know. And so we got to talking, and we got into it with one of the guys on the ship. He made I don't know, you know, guy came down, you know, and hey, smoking, and I almost hit him, you know. And I said, look, I tell you what, don't ever touch me again.
right.
I said, because if you do, I'm decking you. You know, I say, and I think I can do it, you know. I say, but now, if you give me some trouble, that's what's gonna happen. And at that time, the boatswain mate walked up, and he started telling me, you know, hey, we don't have this and we don't have that, and say, I'm gonna put you on report. And when I went up executive officer, I told him what happened, and I told him, I said, you know, you come over here to fight for your country, and you got to take this kind of crap, you know, all the time. And the next week, he sent for me, and he took me up on the quartermasters, and there was a Lee Helsman thing there, and there was a Hell.
Oh, yeah.
And he told a leader up there, he says, I want Johnson to learn both of these operations. I think he can do it. I don't expect any trouble. And the guys, you know, they start showing me, and I started operating, bringing the ship on course 245. You know, I was doing it, you know, and I could look back and I say, oh, this ship is doing what I'm telling it to do, you know. And it was quite a, you know, and I really appreciated the officer. I see what he was trying to do, you know. He said, well, this guy, they sit down there, work on the guns, you know, and all that. They never get exposed to this. So I thought that was a nice gesture.
Well, I should
you
say.
know, and his response to whatever the boatswain told him that I had done, you know, I thought that was Castagliola. I never forgot his name, you know.
Well, you know, it sounds like he was a reasonable human being.
Oh, yeah.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, that change that you noticed in your experience from rank segregation to the desegregation, and as you pointed out, there were some difficult times in between where you had to adjust to this and adjust
all the
to
time.
that.
It was something, you know. It's
all right.
Yeah, you know, I just think. I guess my problem with that whole thing was that how do you rationalize if you're fighting an enemy and you have a system where you actually in training down in Virginia, I felt like at times I was fighting two wars.
Yes.
You go on Liberty, Marines and their buckles, you know, and we got our dirks, you know, and I always thought that was awful. I say, hey, we in the same country here, man.
Well,
you know?
sure, you're all.
But you know, you went through a lot of that.
Well,
and,
yes.
You know, yeah. But
well, we've seen a lot of changes, Clarence, and we keep hoping that.
Yeah,
you know, and we look back. I can remember back in the 20s and the early 30s, and when there were some real serious troubles in the South and so forth, and we've made some progress. We have. Did you take advantage of the GI Bill or anything like it?
Yeah,
that was a wonderful thing.
I came back and I finished I got my high school diploma on the GI Bill, and took courses, evening courses at UC.
Good for you.
But that was in relation to the job I had was on. I came back, and in the Korean conflict, I was working at Ford's when Truman froze us. Ford Motor Company, that first plant that came to Cincinnati on Red Bank Road.
Okay.
And they hired, the first people they hired was 25 black guys.
How about that?
And we were to clean up, put the machines in order, ready for production, waiting the collective bargaining agreement. And you know what happened when they went on go? They put up the bid sheet, and the provisions in the collective bargaining stated that the senior bidder got whatever was up there. And they didn't give us the jobs. I bid it on the job and they didn't give it to us.
Well, for heaven's sake.
So, you know, I went down to the Employee and Labor Relations guy, and I had a petition, and I said, hey, look, you're not following the collective bargaining agreement.
Right.
And he was a guy from Notre Dame, and I did a little research on him, and I felt that this guy, if you could show him a point, that he would be receptive to it, you know. And when I showed him this, he looked at it, and his response was, there's 1 million guys outside on Red Bank Road that would like to have your job.
Yep.
And I said, if I was out there, I would like to, you know, have somebody's job. What's the point here, you know?
Right.
So he backed off, and he said, I'll tell you what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna see how legitimate this petition is. and I'm going to have some groups and spokesmen, and you're going to be spokesman for a group, and we're going to deal with this. And I say, well, this is a precursor to the grievance. Remember, I could have filed a grievance.
Right.
But I'm just trying to, you know, get some kind of solution here.
Sure,
without
be sensible.
Yeah, you know. And so, to make a long story short, he told me, he called me back and he says, your foreman going to be coming to see you about a week or so. So foreman came and he said, hey, come on, you know, and he took me, he put me on a machine. I said, now wait a minute. You're gonna try to expose me to have somebody, you know, I'm in the middle. My badge number is 13. You know, my badge number is 13. In the senior bidder, I'm not the senior guy.
No.
You know, I'd say, hey, now it seems like you're gonna follow the contract. Just go down the list. I'll get mine. You know, the plant's just starting, you know.
Sure.
And so he said, the boss said to put you on the job.
Good.
So I said, well, I ain't gonna turn it down, but there's a sweeper cleaners and come down to clean out my machine and everything. I'll wise them up to what has happened. You know?
Right.
And as they came down, I'll say, hey, look, don't get angry and don't be saying I sold out or something, you know. I said, look, this is what they did, but the next bid sheet bid on it.
Got it. Got an opportunity.
And then without any fanfare, you know.
Very good.
Yeah.
Well, you see, you've shown us, you've proven, of course, that you are capable of dealing with people, and you could make decisions on your own, and they respected that. Now, you're talking about Red Bank Road, that's all gone.
Yeah, right. They got bulk mail, not bulk mail, but
Yeah.
Sharonville,
Right.
and they had the one up in Clermont County.
Yeah.
I think
how
Germans
things have-
bought that, or somebody bought a foreign country, bought that company.
How things have changed.
Yeah.
Well, how many children did you raise, Clarence?
I had two boys.
Two boys?
And
They're here in town, are they?
No, one passed in '72.
Oh.
Greg is in Columbus. He's a lawyer.
Oh, good.
And in fact, he's getting ready to retire. I can't believe it.
Isn't that something, how time
Right,
flies?
Yeah, he'll be
Well,
retiring next year. Yeah.
Well, that's just wonderful, and you know, your citizenship and your community spirit and your ability to work with people and your willingness to make decisions and so forth, you've been a real contributor to our community here, and we're delighted to have the opportunity to talk to you. And I see you got the Tuskegee Airman cap on too. I'll be seeing John Lear out at the Tri-State Warbird Museum pretty soon. Yeah. And
tell him I said hi.
I sure will. I certainly will. And Mincy, I see him. And John Irby, you know John Irby, Vietnam veteran.
Is John a musician?
You know,
Irby?
I don't know about that. He's very active in the Purple Heart organization, and he lives up in.
Are you saying Yerby or Irby?
Irby, E-R-B-Y. He's a Vietnam veteran.
Okay, there's
and
some.
He's very active. He arranges the Memorial Day ceremonies there at the Vietnam statue and everything.
That's not the one I was thinking of, though, yeah.
Well,
thank you, you know.
Well, it's an honor to be here with you. We've been talking with Clarence Thompson in Cincinnati, and a man who's really been around and had
correct that.
tremendous experiences. And again, Clarence, we thank you so much for that.
Appreciate it.
God bless, and as we say, keep them flying.
Okay.
There we are.
All right.